paper. I'm gonna see if I can find some real obvious ones here. Oh, this is like what Allie just said. Sometimes we're just writing over here, but we really need to understand that our paper starts over here, and as a writer, we use our whole line.
When we write from left to right, top to bottom, just like we read from left to right, top to bottom.
That's in here too. And that fact of how we use our paper. Mini lesson. This one I had kids writing back, might kind of be applicable to your little girl, but I demonstrated how I wrote this. Yeah. Oh, I really read it. You read like this. Oh, I read it makes sense. It's just pointing little things out to them. And this definitely isn't for all 26 of my kids. This is maybe for 4 of them. But it's something to keep in the forefront. And once all 26 have them, if you're my table partner and this is how I'm writing, you might now have the tool to say, look, I think you need to, or I'm not sure what you're writing, kind of thing.
Or when we talked about assuming, I guess I just assumed that all kids knew when you get to the bottom of a paper that you can flip it over or you can get another piece of paper. They don't know. I mean, they don't know that. Why would they know that? And so they'd start like writing, sideways and upside down and turning their papers, and gosh, that was a mini lesson too.
And if I show you this one, you'll know the mini lesson. Periods. I mean, they were putting periods after every blooming word. And we had to talk about that we only put periods at the end of our thoughts. And even that's difficult, but you plant the seed, you plant the idea, and you practice. I always wrote about when I took classes, and we always talked about our brains growing. So here's me sitting at class. My brain is growing. But they loved it when their teacher went to school. I always wrote them when I was going to be gone. I would set them up for that in my story for the day. There's a what. That must have been adding detail. You can ask yourself, if you wanted to add something to the story, what, where, who, what else. I have different colors there. I might have been talking about a beginning, middle, end kind of thing. But it's, this one seems like so simple, but once you've spent some time on some of your sight words, writing just pointing out that when we hear when we hear ourselves say in our writing, it's the letter A, it's that word we know. They don't get that. They write you, and write what they hear, which is another thing that we teach them to do. So, some of the...
Because they'll write ed or end.
Yes, end.
I went to the park and that's my talk, so it makes sense. That's good, right?
And here was how quotation marks came into our classroom. This was, I'm not sure which this was. And Hank and Murphy, they're in all my stories. But it was when I was hollering for my dog. So it was very simple quotation kind of thing. It was like one word, kind of like I was saying, Hank, where are you? And highlighted them in pink, revisited it. It just opened the door for the kids that were ready to do that in their writing. So anyway, feel free to go through here. Oh, here's a story about a tick. Obviously, ticks are in my room.
It must have been your first year, too.
This is because there's life in there, yeah.
When you have a guest teacher, how much of this does she do? Do you just do the writing?
I was kind of spoiled. I had an aide because I had 26 kids, so I was so spoiled. But she was a certified teacher, so when I was out, she was in and she knew the deal. So Allie, that question could go to you.
It depended. Usually I'd let the teacher write it, and once we got our crafting nonfiction, I would just pull a thing and copy it for her, or I would say, yesterday I wrote about this, maybe you want to have a story that's something, if it was on periods. It just depended kind of what it was about, but sometimes I'd write it, if I really wanted to jam home a particular thing. But we know that even if you have your kids trained so well, you know, sometimes when guest teachers are there, some of them really just fall apart and it doesn't quite go exactly how you want sometimes. So it depended. If it was something I really wanted to hammer home with the kids, I wrote it. If I just really wanted them to get another, like, let's just review, know and care about, so that the teacher's gonna write something she knows and cares about. And I'd let her do it, or him. And I don't know, I usually don't know what it looked like, so I hope it was okay.
All right, one of the things that Penny asked about, she talked about processing kind of stuff. Those kids that really have their thoughts, but when it comes time to get it to the paper, it gets just kind of muddied and jumbled. And it can happen to even your very high kids that have so many ideas that it's just pouring and they can't get it down fast enough. And we mentioned it before and you've heard us say it. It's the think it, say it, write it. And it's very much a tool that you can give your kids. Even those kids that you know, when you learn about your writers and who they are, when you know that you have a child that struggles with that, that will be the child that will say it for you before they leave the carpet. They won't tell you the topic. They'll express their thought or articulate their thought so that when they go to that paper, they have something to write. Because until you say it, you can't write it, kind of thing. So if I were going to, I don't know, it's kind of, we're kind of not the best setup in here, but, now I feel like this is really
Sometimes it kind of solidifies what my little guy played me last year. I didn't say anything, not anything right.
Right,
I didn't share. Remember I passed?
but you won't even send him off to write until you know what he's writing about now. Yes, right. Okay, so, writers, today I am going to share with you a very important tool that will help you get your story and your thoughts onto the paper. So first off, I need to think about something that I know about and care about. Watch me as I think. I know. It's my fish. I have the most entertaining goldfish. I'm going to put a quick sketch. The name of my goldfish is Fish. And I thought, well, you know, fish. What do fish know? They just swim in the water and blow bubbles and things. My fish knows when I come by the tank, and he lets me know that he is hungry. He comes to the top and he makes some like that. So here's my fish, and he swims to the top, and he makes that sound. 5. To tell me he's hungry. That's what I'm going to write about today. Let me think. Where should I start? I need to start my story. I'm going to start with, I have a special fish. I have a special, oh wait, special gold. His name is Fish, and he likes oh wait. Girls and boys, sometimes I get a little confused because I have lots of ideas that I want to write. I want to write that I feed him, and I want to write. So to help me think more clearly before I write, what should I do? I'm going to think it.
And it's important for us to be knowledgeable
I want to say his name.
about the
That's what I
curriculum
want to
that
say. I
we're
want to
working
say his
with.
name
It's
is
important to
Fish.
have
So I'm going to think it, and then I'm going to say it. Because once I say it, I know exactly what words I have to put down. The next words I'm going to put down are, his name is Fish.
curriculum will
His name
give us
is
the
Fish.
information
Watch
that
me
we
as I write
need in
that.
order to nurture
His
good writers.
name
Because that curriculum is good as a general guideline,
Okay, I have to think again.
but it needs to be connected to what we are observing and
He
learning
lets me
about
know
the
when
students
he's
in front of us.
hungry. He lets me know when he's
Every
hungry.
voice,
Said
everything
it.
comes out right out, because it's what we can do. It's there for a reason, for this, it's purposeful, it's not just out of the blue. So what was the sound for the box tonight? I'm never disappointed by the fact that at the end of the week, I can look
Okay, so
at
I would, this is kind of coming out
all
too
the
long, so I
things
have
I
to
come up with on Sunday night.
condense it, or maybe let the kids know that I'm gonna finish this really late, and there's more details I want. But to send them off, I would say, okay, it's your turn, girls, boys, let's put our thinking caps on. Come up with something you know about and that you can. I usually have them give me a thumbs up, like, I'm gonna be going like this, and I really know what papers look like. And I'll see little thumbs go up, and I see my thumbs up, I'll say, okay, it's time to share with your thinking partner. Make sure that I say ladies first, so that it's not always a girl boy, but they know how to work that out.
Okay.
But so you share your full idea, they share their full idea, and then I will go touch base with them. And before I touch base with them, I will say, now today, girls and boys, I want you to think about what you're going to write, say what you're going to write, and then put the words on
Think
your
about how
Think
these authors
it, say it,
their book
write it.
and how it ties
And
into their story.
It really, it's a huge tool. When you're bopping around the room, because you'll find kids that'll have
How do I want it?
eats,
This is
swims,
what
fish,
okay? So.
and it's simply the question of what were you trying to say here? And sometimes they can't even articulate it, it comes out a mess. And then you'll kind of help them back up. What's one thing you wanted to say here? I want to say that I have fish. Okay, what do you want to say? I have fish. Okay, let's write just what you said.
To work on, so just
So
make
maybe
it
that
But, you know, I got,
a nodding
8
mess
kids here,
that
and they all need to work
forms
on
their
these.
head.
So, then I'll do a mini lesson on that. And it really is amazing how, like doing these mini lessons and using.
And I find with that you'll find sometimes when you're meeting with the kid or you're conferring with the child or whatever it is that you'll ask them what they're going to write about or what are they working on, and they'll just tell you everything. So they'll say about 7 sentences, and you have to just kind of stop and say, like Julie said, what's the first thing or what's one thing that you want to say about your fish? Because otherwise, when they go to write it, and they can't remember all of it. They have it in their head, but they can't write it all at one time. They're really just focusing on one thing right away.
And this isn't to say that kids have to think and say it, write it. Some kids are very capable of taking their thoughts and putting them on the paper. You apply it where it's needed.
You know, you're gonna evaluate
They help
quarterly
you
or
do the
whatever,
tool.
to put a parent, see how much growth they're gonna do.
Anything else we want to say about the conferring chapter? Just, we didn't get the other grade levels.
You know,
Good.
I'm gonna test my children all day, all
I'd like to take a
day,
close look at
every
these.
day.
This is kindergarten. It's kindergarten, but these have been completed for the grade levels. I'm assuming you get them this fall.
And from that.
Yes. So this particular one would be for an individual student. This would be Johnny's page. And you would be able to sit down next to Johnny and at a quick glance, kind of see, is he using calendars? Something we're gonna work on. It would give you some direction on where to take Johnny, things that you should be looking for, that sort of thing. So we don't have enough copies, but it's just so that you can see it. So it's kind of share. They have a key up there on how you can kind of learn things. That's yours. That's yours. What works best for you? Don't put something down that doesn't have any meaning for you.
And then this one is the same thing. I think it has the same standards and everything on it, but it's a class list. So you could do one, you could go through whatever it would be, but if you want to see your whole class, you can just write their names and then check off. So you can say, okay, let's see, capitalizes the first letter. Wow, most of my kids have that. Okay, who doesn't? And then just be a quick check to see how am I doing? How is my class doing? And then you have a good plan for that small group. Yes, I think
you're gonna get it. Oh.
That's our, she's gonna say, people
Tina.
These have been created for the principal?
And they'll come out when we get our kids done, right?
That's my guess. I would hope you would get it before you get testing stuff, because it really should be beside you from the day you start writing with your kids.
But you get your
One is
testing
the whole
stuff before
class.
school, don't you?
Yeah.
Don't we get our testing stuff?
Some of it, yeah. So And that, there again, you might not even use individual sheets. You might just like the whole class sheet where you can see the whole limbs. Absolutely. It's all, it's all up to you.
We're recording so much. I like the ad class.
Because if I don't
Compare it, maybe it's
or
the clustering.
Okay, but even that being said, maybe you carry one of those sheets around as your reference tool, but you're still recording like this. If this is more meaningful to you,
Right, you may want to do both, so that you have details that you have written out, but you want to be able to just quick look.
but you have a visual knowledge of where you want to take it all the time. Always working with that end goal piece.
how would you correspond? I mean, it's the same thing.
That's for the whole class. You're gonna see your whole class right here.
So if you
Johnny,
just
Joe,
wanna go
Susie,
through-
Sam, all of them. This is one child.
Yes, I understand
Okay.
that, I just don't understand when you, like, we were
Where
wondering
you
when
fill
you
this
would.
one out.
Mm-mm. You don't. It's whatever preference. If you want to fill
Okay.
both of them out, if you want to fill none of them out, it's just a tool.
If
It's
you would
just
like
a
to.
tool.
Yeah,
Because, I'm sorry, I did type up that chart, that's what I was doing on my computer, that one of yours. I just typed up a chart and sent it to you if you want to share with the group, I don't know, but just kind of
Just
format
this
of
whole
what you
class
had.
writing thing?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
So they would have that.
Super.
so you send it to Julie and then we'll send it out, is that what you're saying? Okay, yeah, Mark, I'll send me something, we'll send out to everyone. And the reason that these were kind of created is because after going to Linda Hoyt, and she was talking so much about checklists and how valuable those are, you know, so many teachers were saying, we really feel like we need something like that, so we can just take a quick look if we need it.
And pull.
Yes, yep, and so these are just so beautifully created, and like Julie said, when you get these in the fall, they don't have to be used, but if you'd like them, they're just a resource for you to use.
And would teachers have access to all of them? So if I was a kindergarten teacher and you have that high flyer, could I dip into the first grade one? I mean, do
Oh,
teachers have
certainly.
access of all of them?
Yay for you, yes.
And you know what, and if not, I bet you could just go to the first grade teacher and say, hey, can I have a copy of that? Yeah.
Are these gonna be put on here?
That's what I'm guessing.
I don't know that.
Or are they?
I guess I never
You're
was
thinking
told
that,
like where they would land.
I bet they'll have to do this out.
You're thinking,
Make a
you're thinking
request.
this chart, it's the staff development.
Yeah.
That's how they're going to come out.
Oh,
That would be
okay.
nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would make sense if they would.
I think that little conversation that we just had drops us nicely into assessment. Because one of the things that I hear around the room is kind of on the child end of things. And I think as we move into assessment, we need to realize that this very much informs us and monitors our performance and monitors where we need to go. And so often we're worried about getting that score from the child and getting that sort of documentation because it's expected of us. But we forget that the largest piece in assessment, if we use it, is really to tell us something. Where are we weak? Where are we strong? What else do we need to offer? And so if we jump, or is that kind of where we? Yep. If we jump to page 83. And these bleed to both sides of that. They're very much a conferencing tool. They're very much an assessment tool. So both sides of that. I didn't do a whole lot of highlighting in this chapter, did you? I just think that there were just some nice points. Assessment is to inform us and to help us plan. When I read that first section about, or I guess it'd be technically the second section, as we plan for the first days of school, did you notice how they have the ability to drop back into, like the kindergarten teachers drop back into the feeder preschools, and the first grader I mean, would have been a wreck in this district this year, but but wow, do they have their people group things. They just really, that's very ideal. That's great. It probably in reality doesn't happen very often with that.
I like the letter idea on 85, you know, as teachers, you know, we always kind of, you know, we send out these surveys, you know, there was the best survey, it was just write to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, to heck with the survey, just write about your child, you know, I really,
Yep.
I like that piece.
About their passions, their worries, about their friends and family.
And again, another thing that you're saying that comes again from that conference piece is you know your children. Because through knowing your children, you know when to take the instruction, you know where to supplement and push and that sort of thing.
And then they talked about looking at a piece with a particular growth line in mind.
Yeah.
Name what the child can do along the growth line and imagine what the logical next step is going to be.
That
I don't know the growth lines.
right here. Here's your growth line. Exactly, and that's what we hear teachers saying. We can't have the Common Core. I mean, we're becoming familiar with it. We're learning it. We're getting to know it. But here is your glimpse, literally, of what your kids. This is your growth line. So you always know if you're
So that's
unsure.
our scaffolding.
There you go.
And to keep our minds too, she said in here a couple things that you need to choose the lens through which you look. And some important things, you don't ever think what can't a child do, but what can they do now and what can they almost do now. So that just ties into what's next. What can they almost do where I should push them? What should they be doing next?
Yeah, and be clear about why you're assessing. Are you assessing for growth? Are you assessing for summative information? Are you assessing to know? Right? I know. Are you assessing really for your own information? And for most, I would throw this out there. Most of your assessment should be for your information. And really, your summative piece will happen.
Well, doesn't it make it a little bit more enjoyable to do it too? Like if you know that you're gonna use it, you know what I mean? Just a little bit more.
And realize that all of this, all of these little notes, you're assessing your children. This is your formative assessment. It doesn't need to be any more formal than this. When you enter that grade at the end, or that big, that standard base number, you have to be able to support it. As long as you can support it, either through work samples or this is enough. You don't have to have them edit and take to finalization X number of pieces through the grading period. It might be one piece. It might be 5. But as long as you can support, show growth, and it's as simple as this, or that checklist, you're okay. You can believe in what you're doing and be solid with that.
Or, like in here in the tools for assessment, when I talked about having one folder that was containing their progress over the year. And I have to say that's one of the best things for conferences. The last 2 years, almost every single one of my parents has told me, like they just know by the second conference, they look so much forward to their kids' writing. They can't wait till we get to the part where I talk about their writing because I show them how much they've changed. And even at the first one, okay, I've already collected 3, and so look at how much they've changed just in this small amount of time. That's so great for us as teachers, but think how, I mean, I don't have kids, many of you do, but to see that, and you've seen it, where you see your kids grow either with pictures or videos or work samples, and it's beautiful, isn't it? And it just makes you think, wow, look at that, look what they're doing.
And sometimes you forget
Yeah.
where they've come
day-to-day
from.
stuff.
And when you see it, you're like, holy man alive. This kid has been on it.
I just have to share, when my son was finished with first grade, I mean, I just saved everything. And I mean, it was piles, and I was like, okay, what do you want to keep, what do you want to throw, And he started at first diligently, keep. And then within 5 minutes, it was just, but Mom, I worked so hard on all of it. I'm like, keep it all.
Oh,
I have it in a suitcase. One day I'll go through it, but yeah.
When he's a famous writer.
Yeah.
I have Rubbermaid tubs galore. I'm right there with you. I know that I can't get myself to go through them yet, and they're older.
Can't you just
so.
give it to them?
And somebody
I
said
did
it's
that.
time.
That's what my
It's
mom
time.
said.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
My mom did too when she saw me throwing some things. She's like, "Don't throw that!" I said, "Mom, I'm either gonna throw it at your house or at my house. So what's the difference?" But you know that is kind of funny. I did keep some things, and I had a book that I did in kindergarten, and it was like an all about me book. And I was looking through it, and I showed it to the kids. And I showed the kids how funny it was because, like, I wrote the word animus where I'm from. Well, I didn't know how to write animus, but you can see that the teacher wrote it, and then I copied over top of it. And so we talked about that, and I showed the kids, and they said, "Well, why did your teacher write it for you?" and I said, "Well, that's what we did when I was in kindergarten. You know, there was nothing wrong with it. That's just what we did when I was in kindergarten." And I said, "So boys and girls," I said, "you think I'm a pretty good writer, right?" And they do. They're like, "Oh, you're such a good writer, Mrs. Weigel." I said, "Yeah, but I had to copy my teacher's work. You do your own work. Think of how great of writers you already are, and then how you're just going to continue to be better and better writers." And when I told them that, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to be a better writer than Mrs. Weigel." Yes!
I even wrote to some of my kids, when you say that, I wrote to some of my kids, we send them at the end of the year, we put a self-addressed envelope in there, and write us over the summer, we'll write you back. And so I had gotten some letters from some of my kids, and I told them that I would be teaching this writing class, and I said, I wonder if those teachers will be able to write as well as you. And they're probably thinking,
Probably not.
So you empowered them.
yes, they believe it. They do.
What do you do? You put a stamped envelope?
Yeah, well, I don't remember what we did last year, but this year we actually did pails. We got the dollar pails, and we put in math games,
Yeah.
or
Like writing, paper,
yeah.
pens, pencils, that kind of stuff. And then we did a, yeah. We did it
Probably
for
not.
I don't know if I did for pencils. I put some,
I
they
got a
love the
pencil.
teacher ones and so, yeah, some teacher pens.
And then we put a self-addressed stamped envelope.
Yes, so they would write us.
I have a question.
And first graders, yeah.
It says that it is important to show children examples of good work that are within the child's reach, and to supply children with guidelines that can apply to the assessment of their own work. That must be the kids, showing them kids' work and not just art examples.
I would think both.
So that is like the share work? Do you think that counts as that?
Where did you read that at? I just want to read that. Where did you read that?
87 top page.
Oh, I see it in the first full paragraph.
They have to have a concrete sense of what good work entitles to be able to chart their own growth forward.
I think you said a mouthful in that. Okay, so they have to know what good work looks like, and we kind of talked in that you never dummy down your writing. Like she said, with that first lesson, you give them license to write where they're at, but you expect them to write where they're at. And so that means that we're not spelling phonetically unless our lesson is on spelling phonetically. And we're always using our best words, our most interesting words, that sort of thing. So there's that piece. There's also the piece of, and that's a lesson that Allie and I added last year, and we found really great things come from it. The idea of literally having a 1, a 2, a 3 rubric. Yes, like sample pieces.
This is what a 1 looks like.
This is what a 1 looks like. This is what a 2 looks like. Did you create your own?
Like, I know I've got one in my Pinterest folder.
You know,
think
I
my
found
colleague
it on
had it.
Pinterest, and then I just
I
made a story. Like I just made a story. So I drew
I
myself at a park. I drew myself, and then I wrote the word park,
Oh,
and
okay.
then myself in one more detail, and then.
But always kind of on the
Okay.
same topic, so
Yeah,
they could see
yeah.
how,
Progression.
Yeah.
you're
But
right.
kind of using, I mean, I guess I didn't know.
Yeah, and I didn't
Kind
make
of
it
using
fancy.
The
Yeah.
same idea that's on Pinterest, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but create it with them.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what's kind of funny? The first day I did that rubric, I had one little boy, and I couldn't really tell what he was doing, because I was conferencing and I was kind of walking around, but he was next to the rubric, he sat and he copied my story for the rubric. And then I went over and I said, "Tell me what you're writing about today." And, you know, he couldn't read it, and so I said, "So is this a story that you really know and care about?" probably not. But I worked really hard on it, and I said, oh, I'm so glad that you did, you know, but he wanted it to be perfect. He wanted to be a 4. So he was gonna copy my work. Which that's cool though, that he really wanted to be, and so, yeah.
And would you, if and Dave helps me do this, would you color code the, you know, the beginning, middle, and end, so the introduction is one color, so that they can see that?
If you were teaching it.
If you were putting up a
If that, is that in your standards, beginning, middle, end?
Yes, first grade it is.
Then it would be a very nice cue, I think.
You mean writing like the beginning of a story, the middle, is that what you mean? The end of a
Yeah,
For them to.
the introduction would be
Oh, I see
one
what you
color,
mean.
Yeah.
and then the story, and then the closing would be, so that they were in
Yeah,
colors.
yeah, that's a good idea.
So that we knew what was looking for.
Yeah, and doing it side by side. I'm gonna put my beginning in blue. Now I'm done with the beginning, I'm moving to the middle of the body. I don't know what the correct terminology would be so that it sits with them.
I think
The
it's just a
details,
detail.
the details.
Detail.
Watch me do my details in. This is gonna help you when you. Okay, so 3 things.
Here's your
Yep.
condense.
There you go.
I started that first grade.
Okay, so in that question, in that meaty question, so it's you demonstrating at a high level, so they'd be seeing it there. You being very concrete about what that looks like for them, so in like a 1, 2, 3, 4, that sort of a reference piece for them. And then also in showcasing, highlighting the really great things that happen just among their peers. And that could be your lowest writer throwing in an exclamation mark at the right spot. That could be your highest writer with this really cohesive 3-page story. It can be so many things. So it's all of that.
So I know we're talking so much about assessment now. How are you guys feeling on the conferring piece of it? You know, since we've talked so much about it. I know yesterday when we got done with mini lessons, we kind of checked in and you all felt pretty comfortable with mini lessons. Where are you guys with conferring?
I think I need to do it,
Yeah, is
Yeah.
that the truth?
Yeah.
and then just use my mistakes.
And then read this again. And then meet every Monday night.
Yeah.
That's right.
And
That's brilliant to say you need to do it. I like
Yeah.
that.
That's true. And also now with this assessment piece kind of going back to mini lessons. So, you know, in first grade we do, well, I think we all kind of do the same, right? Opinion, narrative.
Right.
Is that kind of K1? Okay. So do you do a mini lesson on an opinion piece? I suppose.
Okay, so here we go.
Here we go.
Because
Here we go. Yeah.
you have to, right?
We're jumping into Common Core.
Right.
Common Core has expectations for us, and I mentioned it one time earlier. Once you establish writers in your classroom, you can take them traveling in any direction at any time once they believe they are writers. So, if at the beginning of the year, you do an author study, and your kids are all over, in my classroom it was Mo Willems, and they're all over Mo Willems, here's your opportunity to write a persuasive piece. Why should you, why convince somebody to read?
Right, and that's what I've been trying with too, linking those picture books. Like, do you guys already have like some picture books linked to opinion, linked to?
I don't think you need to worry about
No.
that. I think you need to read what's happening in your classroom and identify the opportunities that emerge from what is happening. So don't get yourself in that spot of, I'm going to teach opinion here,
Right.
and then when that semester is done, I'm going to teach narrative, and when that don't do that. Don't do that, because you have writers. We don't write like that. We have an opportunity, we've just done this really great thing, we've learned some incredible things about spiders and how they sink their fangs into their prey and suck their guts out. There's your informative piece. There's your informative piece. You guys know some really incredible things about spiders. If you could write, what things would you write about spiders right now? if you could pick a few things that you think are most important to write about spiders. Because that way it doesn't feel so top heavy.
Right. And then if you wanted to do like a unit on informative writing, that would almost be like your pre-assessment then. You know, like how did my kids do on that? Were they having a hard time getting their facts out? And then you could kind of go from there, if that's the route that you did want to take, you know, from there.
And when you go into the explorations and the crafting,
Yep.
they really take you deep. And I think Alan and I both agree, we love those tools. They're deep tools. And so you better be feeling really good about what you're doing. Not that you don't try them, because that's exactly how we learn.
Good, feeling good about doing this.
But don't beat yourself up because they can hold these kids for 1 month on perfecting that particular writing style. You'll get there. But initially, focus on what's happening, what your kids are passionate about, and let that.
And that's your narrative piece anyway.
Yeah.
And narrative writing is one of the kinds of writing.
Yes.
But in the growth of writing, and we made this mistake last year, and I have to say I recommended it, I suggested it, because doesn't that work nicely into 3 trimesters?
Right.
We'll do
Yeah,
narrative,
I did it
we'll do
too.
video, we'll do persuasive.
I did too.
And then
Have to
about
have a
halfway
score
through
there.
you go,
Have to have a score.
wait a minute, now they've grown in all this writing ability, and because I sat down with the teacher in the summertime, she said, will you help me plan out my writing? And so we did plan with the greatest things in mind, but their ability grew across all 3 genres of writing.
And yet
As
you
the year
took a
progressed.
snapshot
Yeah.
as a narrative at the beginning of the year. And if you saw what they could do at the end of the year,
Very
not that you
different.
shouldn't take snapshots because that shows growth. But I thought the same thing. I thought, oh my gosh, I gave them a score for narrative. And they're really, at the end of the year, they're probably blowing 4s out of the water.
Julie and I, after our first year of teaching, so last summer, I found it. We took like weeks planning out our explorations and how we were going to do